Okay, all of you that just made the OLR at Stony Point, welcome. Welcome to the family. I had the joy of attending it last year as a pre-novice, and I want to welcome you. And I'm going to throw out some situations that might have happened during the retreat. See if you can relate to any of these. Maybe when you were flying up or upon arriving at Stony Point, or maybe even the whole first day, you weren't expecting much. You just kind of going with the flow, seeing what's happening. It was good, but not amazing. But then all of a sudden, stuff started clicking. And you did have that amazing time. And then you realized you were meeting people and having experiences that you'll never forget. And then to top it all off, the weekend came to a close and you're going, where did it go? You know, I don't want to leave. I just met these people and getting to know them and now it's time to go. If you can relate to any of those four, you weren't expecting much, you had an amazing time, met people and had experiences that you'll never forget, and maybe you didn't want to leave. If you can relate to any of those, then have I got a story for you. And if you can believe me, Peter, James, and John had a very similar experience. Yes, the apostles had a very similar experience to what you had. And let me lay down the story for you of the Transfiguration and see if you can see the connections that are about to come. So Jesus was leading 3 of his apostles up the mountain. And when they reached the top, Jesus transfigured before their eyes. His clothes became as white as light. And then 2 of the greatest prophets in history appeared next to him, Moses and Elijah. And then Peter said to them, it is good that we are here. Let us build 3 tents, one for each of you. Then a cloud appeared, and out of the cloud they heard God's booming voice, and it said, "This is my son, in whom I am well pleased." And then he said, "Listen to him." Then the scene changed. The prophets left, and Jesus was left with them, but in his previous appearance. He was back with them, and he said, "Be not afraid. Rise and follow me." So they go back down the mountain. And you may be thinking, this doesn't relate to me at all. I didn't see any prophets appear during the retreat. I definitely didn't hear the booming voice of God. And I don't even know how to set up a tent, much less suggest that we should set up 3 of these. If you're thinking any of those, hear me out. Okay, so the apostles were climbing up this mountain with Jesus. They weren't expecting much. They had been traveling with Jesus for a year or more now. Okay, so they weren't expecting much. But then they get to the top and Jesus transfigures. He becomes as white, almost as light in front of them. It was an amazing experience. And then they met 2 people that they had heard about since children in the synagogues and even into their adulthood. Men from of old that have already passed on, and yet they were standing in front of them. Elijah and Moses, fully alive. People they would never forget. And then when it was all said and done, Peter suggests, let's set up tents. Let's stay here. He didn't want to leave. And there's a beautiful part of one of the Gospels that says, and Peter didn't know what he was saying. Because maybe this is a hint to us, you can't live on a mountain forever. We eventually all have to come down. Which leads us to the question that I know I've had to ask after most of the retreats I've ever been on. That question of, what now? What am I supposed to do now? How does my life continue? And there's a few, metaphors or examples we could use. We could say, is it like a football team that's, just won a big game and they're celebrating, but they have to come down the mountain to continue practice before they play their next game to hopefully climb another mountain to victory? Or is it like the salmon who spend their whole life in the ocean and then at the end of their life they climb back up that mountain to where they started their lives? And then before they come back down the mountain, they die. Or is it like a tourist or a hiker, who's out there backpacking, going up the mountains and loves it, spends a little time there reflecting, enjoying the view, and then goes on? Hasn't affected their life much at all. Which one of these 3 do you think that might be an example for us as we're coming back down the mountain? Well, you're going to have to wait till next week to see what the reflection is or to see what we're challenged to do. But if you just can't wait till next week, what you can do is look at that we have 3 sections of the gospel that tell of the transfiguration in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And you can read them, and if you want to know what happens next, keep reading. But I guarantee you the reflection next week will surprise you even more as far as what we're challenged to do, what happens when we come off the mountain. And with that I say, peace out, auf Wiedersehen, adieu, goodbye.